really cool.
Unbelievable to see what's down there. Yeah, they put on the show. There might be costumes and things.
It's crazy. We're dancing down there. Nothing strange. Coming on, Dad.
No. I'm just excited for you is all.
Give him the Oscar already, please.
Josh Hartnett could say anything to me, and I'd just say yes. Whatever you want to do, just tell me what you want to do.
I would follow him down there.
I totally would. I mean, seems like it's fun. I get where he's coming from, sort of. Oh my god. So I saw this. I saw Trapped, like a week ago, I think, this last week, and you've seen it twice now. Is that correct?
Absolutely, man. Yep, I saw it opening weekend, and then I saw it again last night. Second weekend, I'm gonna help my guy Knight with his box office take. How they do it?
He does, because it's not doing all that hot.
I know, it's not doing well.
I saw it Wednesday. Was it Wednesday night? Yeah, and it was me and two other people, and I live in a suburb of New York City, so not good. It's not looking good for M. Night on this one.
He's gonna keep trucking. I mean, it's his money, right?
It is his money. Yeah, he's personally financing his movies now because I think he has to. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new season of Film Trace. I want to say season 14, technically.
Yeah.
I think it is season 14. The theme of this cycle this season is Manhunt Movies. So our premise here is that we're going to choose two movies, like per normal. One movie will be about the hunter, maybe a serial killer, and the focus will be on them hunting people or something.
Or the detectives hunting the killer.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then kind of what's our counter movie then? That's like hunter and hunted, right? I guess I came up with this concept, right? I can't even explain it.
You did. No, I think most of them actually fit more into the mold of the hunted films are from the perspective of the killer, the one who is being hunted by the authorities. In this case, Josh Hartnett as the serial killer Cooper in Trap by M. Night Shyamalan, but then also from the flip side, we're looking at Oz Perkins' Longlegs, which is largely from the perspective of Micah Moore's character Harker, who's a FBI agent, like The Mentalist in the CBS program.
The Mentalist. Can we not talk about CBS programming on this show?
Well, I mean, that's kind of what it was.
We're getting started. Yeah, so that's the way I see this season, is sort of the hunted versus the hunter. And so we are kicking it off with two. We're just sort of lucky that these two movies were coming out close to each other, and it was like, oh, this fits the theme. So I'm excited about it. Something different, something new. I love these movies. I mean, what are like some of the classics that we're probably not going to cover, but like it's worth mentioning? Seven would be one.
Silence of the Lambs.
Anything where it's like sometimes like police procedurals will fall into this. It's been a genre of film that's been around since film started. And so we're going to go all the way back, I think, to the 1930s this season. So it should be really exciting.
Yeah, our oldest deep dive yet.
Yes. How do we want to dive into this? Do you want to talk about Longlegs first? Because it did come out first, so we probably should dive into that one.
For sure. And I think that this is kind of a barn burner of a season premiere, though I don't want to kind of overhype, because we're Dan and I know going into this conversation that he prefers one over the other, and I prefer the opposite.
And the more I dive into it, the more I prefer mine. So.
And likewise. But yeah, let's begin with Longlegs, so that I get the last word to defending Trap. So the overall, just general idea here, right, is that we've got a filmmaker who has been trying to kind of break through as elevated horror auteur for a minute now. He has had the grand advantage. Nepotism is going to be a key theme in today's episode. Being Anthony Perkins' son, the titular psycho himself, and Osgood Perkins, also known as Oz, has created a kind of satanic cult horror thriller, wherein an FBI agent, Harker, is tasked in the 1990s with tracking down a serial killer known only as Longlegs, who supposedly kills without actually having to even lift a finger. He leaves notes at the crime scene, and it seems like the actual actor in the killings are the father in the family, but there's no evidence of who Longlegs is, just these notes that he leaves behind. So it's got some Silence of the Lambs aspects, some Zodiac style questionings, and it seems to have largely worked in terms of like the cultural zeitgeist. Nicolas Cage plays the title character, and it has clicked for so many people as kind of the elevated horror movie of 2024, put out by Neon.
Yeah, so bizarre.
So you got to try to convince me, Dan, because it did not click with me. But I want to hear from you, since you definitely represent the popular viewpoint here.
You know, let's not get overboard on.
Okay.
So I know. Have you seen Gretel and Hansel? Did you ever see that?
No, I saw The Black Coat's Daughter, which
What did you think of it? Did you like it?
I despised it.
I haven't seen it all the way. I've seen bits and pieces of it like several times, but I've never sat down and watched the whole thing. Mm-hmm. I went to go see Gretel and Hansel in the theater right as the pandemic was starting. Mm-hmm. So it was like one of those like it was like that and The Invisible Man. I think I saw the last two movies are like seared into my mind. Gretel and Hansel though was a movie that from the moment I saw the trailer, I was like, I am all in. 100% vibes. And that's kind of the selling point to Longlegs, is that it's very vibey. Now, what does that actually mean? From my perspective, it's basically like you go in and it is just a very rich visual and audio experience that doesn't necessarily make sense or need to make sense, but it creates a very, very creepy atmosphere. And I think Longlegs is very successful at doing that. One of the better sort of horror films in the last decade in terms of just creating an atmosphere that is unnerving and strange. I think this movie has connected with people because over the last decade or so, the often maligned termed elevated horror, right? It's become kind of mainstream. And so like I was blown away by seeing this like 2 weeks after it came out on maybe a Saturday night, like a later Saturday night show. The theater was packed. I was like, how is this happening for a Neon film, shot for under $10 million from what I would consider to be a more experimental director? I mean, especially Gretel and Hansel. And this one is not, I would say, a mainstream film by any stretch of the imagination. So for some reason, it is starting to click with people outside of like the horror nerddom and like film nerds, right? Because that was probably the only two groups of people that were into his work beforehand. I think it's just people are wanting more and more movies like this and films like this. And I think more than anything, why this worked, two reasons. One, the marketing was phenomenal. They didn't even mention the name of the movie in the first trailers that came out. And so Neon did like a kind of they said it was inspired by Blair Witch Project, which was a huge marketing sort of revolution when that came out in 99. And we remember that very well when that happened. It was essentially, hey, this is a documentary about real people. And then there's a lot of sort of confusion. Is this real? Is it not? It created that sort of hype. They tried to do that here by not really giving away too much of the film. And of course, who the main star, or not main star, but like the big A-list actor who plays the serial killer, they don't really mention that in any of the marketing either. So I don't know. I think it was just one of those movies that because of the vibes and the great marketing. Now, the reality is I don't think people actually love this movie. Like, if you look at the cinema score, C+. And in the theater, people were like, when I was at, like, just anecdotally, didn't seem to love it. Which makes sense. It's Oz Perkins. Like, this is not a mainstream horror film. Why are you people here? Like, that's what kept on going through my head. Like, these, like, 17 or like 19-year-old girls were there. And I was like, why would you come to see this movie? Like, this is not like, this is not Scream 6. And so I don't know. I mean, I think ultimately it's a marketing thing, and his movies work via marketing and sort of like creating a mystery and a lure, because that's kind of all his movie is. Like, there's not necessarily a ton of meat on the bones to Longlegs, and I'm assuming that's probably one of your critiques of it, right?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the main thing, is that I can definitely appreciate a movie that is, quote, vibes only, but there has to be like some kind of entry point to that being either a singular experience or it being, very open to interpretation. I think I feel like I have to bring up another film that we didn't fit into an episode here, but that we talked about recently. I saw the TV Glow, which
Yes.
I loved and you didn't,
Yeah.
and that's very much a vibes film.
Absolutely.
But I also felt like it did some of this like postmodern pastiche stuff that Longlegs does to create those vibes, but with like a very kind of a clear purpose that is either discernible or open to the viewer how much they want to engage with it. And I just did not feel that here. I felt a very kind of clinical parsing together of various references. I felt like the movie was more akin to like the Conjuring universe than actual like elevated horror. I mean,
Explain yourself.
I think the thing that really like tipped the scales for me while watching the film was the haunted doll. Spoiler alert, it shows up about halfway through the film.
Yeah.
And that is a trope that really felt kind of alien to this otherwise procedural / like satanic cult movie aesthetic that Perkins seemed to be going for. And it just felt like an easy bone to throw to kind of tie things together. So spoilers from here on out, this doll ends up being essentially how Longlegs kills people without lifting a finger, through satanic worship and a hired hand of sorts, a blackmailed character. And that kind of is the only real entry point I feel for like what this film is about. Unlike I Saw the TV Glow, everything there kind of ties into the trans experience, the growing up isolated in the 90s experience. And here, like, we get a picture of Bill Clinton on the wall, and we get, admittedly pretty cool monologue from Kiernan Shipka, in a one scene role.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
But I don't think that there's a lot of evidence here, because we'll talk about this much more, I think, when we get into Trap. But when Perkins is on the press circuit talking about this film, he talks about how he wanted Gretel and Hansel to be more personal, and so he set into Longlegs to do that and to make this entire kind of plot center around him grappling with his own father's stardom as a Hollywood actor, and also the secret that his mother kept from him and the public that Anthony Perkins was gay, all the way through when he died of AIDS in the early 90s. And I mean, that's interesting, and that's I think that if that was cathartic for him, that's fantastic. But I didn't see that until I started digging into the research. Whereas with I Saw the TV Glow, or when we talk about Trap, it feels so much more like richly embedded into the fabric of the movie.
Richly embedded. You're going to use that term with Trap. Okay.
Oh, yeah. I'm ready for it.
I see what we're doing. Here's the thing. You're asking questions of a movie that is not answering any questions, right? Like the Nick Cage stuff, the Satan stuff, the doll stuff, it's all made up. Like, it's just not a thing. It's not like, is it even in the, I don't even know if it's in the script. I feel like a lot of this movie was like improv for like good shots, which is why I think younger people are really into it. because it's just like, oh, this is so cool. It looks cool. It sounds cool. The soundscapes and stuff are just really good. Multiple people that like I go through like Reddit boards to kind of get like what are people feeling about the movie, and like people, and even when I went to go see it with Pippa, she's like afterwards it just felt so weird stepping out of the theater because I felt like I was in like this other world all of a sudden. It's very like an alienating film in that sense on like a visceral level. But yeah, I mean, I would accept any criticism of this film. There's not really a story here. Right. Like there just isn't. And like the same thing was with Gretel and Hansel. It is a very visual, I would call it borderline experimental. And I'm not just throwing out that term to throw it out, but like he really does focus on shots, coloring, and sound more than he does on story beats and emotional beats. And like it's almost like he's creating really cool scenes and hearing the sounds that he wants first, and then he's going back and kind of trying to weave together some sort of emotional or plot narrative to make it all work. And in this movie, does it work? No. It doesn't really. Like that's like the thing about it is I wouldn't even say it's a really good manhunt movie because there isn't really a manhunt going on per se.
Yeah, she solved the Zodiac code in
like the first scene,
even though
that's like
an open case for 30 years.
But that's a perfect example of the weird juxtaposition in this film. That scene, and I could feel it in the theater, we were all freaked out. She's at home, she has the letter, she's doing the or whatever, the first time she gets the letter, and she's trying to solve it. There's this procedural element, but then these shots, and it's just like just lives in a log cabin out in the woods in the Pacific Northwest. What? And these beautiful shots. And so it's like, I think the film is a great example of elevated horror, and it's almost like a parody of elevated horror, where it's like, what is a scary movie? Where
they even got Micah Moore from It Follows.
Micah Moore, exactly. Who's like, I guess you would call her, maybe she is a scream queen, I guess. I don't know. I don't think that's a derogatory term. It's a good term. And yeah, so it has beautiful visuals. I mean, like, and when I say beautiful, it's like amazing visuals. Like this is not just like well shot, or this is somebody who is, and whoever they're working with on that side, the cinematographer, doing something very special. And also I would say the sound too is definitely upper echelon of stuff that I've seen over the last few years. But yeah, I mean, you're right. There's no real story here. It's not like, he was inspired by Silence of the Lambs. It's not even the same universe as that movie. But it doesn't necessarily make it like a bad film. I don't think. It's not a film that like transcends the genre or anything like that, but it is, I think it's a worthwhile exercise in creating like a really vibey serial killer movie. And that's kind of how I view it. But I also say like the Perkins stuff is fascinating because I was reading through the NY Magazine interview with him, and he's talking about his father and how a lot of that was hidden from him growing up. And it was sort of like, but also playing out in like the tabloids at the same time. It was sort of like what I can't connect in my head, and maybe you can help me, is like, sure, it's a personal film and he's talking about kind of his mother. Even like your explanation of that doesn't really make sense, as that like, oh, she's protecting the family and all that sort of stuff. I don't even know like what other sort of personal life thing could he be talking about here? That's why I really don't get it. It's like,
right. What? And it's very much relegated into the third act, right? Because there is this,
tacked on,
this reveal element to, our protagonist and where she came from and why she is who she is today.
Yeah.
But also like there's, the first act, her like mentalist superpower of sensing where a killer is not really explored after that introduction exposition. So it feels like a very fragmented movie in that
Yeah.
sense, narratively. And so that's one of the things that's frustrating about it when you try to like look at it through this personal lens. Because there's also like, Osgood Perkins quoting about, the T-Rex song that's used as like the bookends for the film, and then it's also like used as like a epigram at the beginning of the film. And he almost gets a little hostile in some of the interviews where he's just like I do it because I have to make a choice. Like like he basically chose that song for vibes. And there is no like sometimes he seems like he's like, it's just because that's what I thought would be cool, right? It's like
which is like, it's funny because I'm giving him a pass on that because you know what it is, because I share his aesthetic sensibilities. Zack Snyder does the same thing and I hate it. So it's like, it's one of those like personal taste things where it's like, oh, this is really cool. And like for me, it's so rooted in the Pacific Northwest. It just feels like you're there in like Vancouver or like or Portland or the area, and it just has this sort of downtrodden, dark, like an episode of the X-Files or something.
Yeah, and I will say I do agree with you about the sound design. They had kind of a unique process. There was an interview with the editor on Awards Radar, and the typical process is pretty straightforward. You have like temp music, and then you edit it, and then the composer does the finalized score. But they did kind of a more back and forth because they had known each other. They had been friends. The composer goes by the name Ziegler, and they worked both with like trying to time the music with the scares and making it organic and natural and like revising it as they went. So it's very much a film, I think, that also kind of came alive in the post-production process, which I think is sometimes what you need to do if you're going to do a movie that is trying to do horror in a different way, because it's become such a cookie cutter thing. So I will say that while the tropiness of it very much stemmed from, in my opinion, like the Conjuring universe, it at least was like artfully assembled in a way that did not feel like a Hollywood movie.
I want to pick at you in the Conjuring statement because it's not clicking for me, the connection between the two. What's the bridge that you're building there?
I mean, you've got literally the most recent Conjuring movie is like the satanic worship. Yeah. And then you've got the Annabelle movies. They got the Haunted Wall.
I see what you're saying.
And then like it just feels like all these supernatural elements are passable.
It's
today.
It's a jumbo. Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, you're right. That's right. Because Perkins, I don't. He wrote this, didn't he? Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
I don't know that Perkins has a great. He has a great eye and ear for creating atmosphere. That is like objectively true. I don't know that he necessarily understands what makes a great horror movie from a writing, editing, acting perspective. I just don't. I haven't seen any of these movies.
Yeah, and I think what specifically, and you can tell me about Gretel and Hansel, but one of the things that just like did not work for me with The Blackcoat's Daughter was its humorlessness, and here is the first time it seems like he's trying to inject some comedy into his horror, and I don't know. I don't know if that's another thing that kind of fell short for me, where I'm like, there was one line delivery, and it wasn't even Nicolas Cage, it was Blair Underwood in the final scene where he says like, I'll be, when he's possessed and he's about to go murder his wife in the kitchen, and he says, I'll be back from the kitchen. She won't be back.
Yeah.
Right. Where it's like there seems to be some talent there to like have these darkly comedic moments, so they're so sparse throughout the movie, and obviously mostly punctuated when Nick Cage shows up.
Yeah, he can't switch tones.
Okay.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like he's so good at this tone. Like he'd be great doing like a reboot of the X-Files or something like, or maybe not. Now that I'm thinking about that, scratch that. He's great at that tone, but he can't. He's not deft enough to walk the tightrope of like, I think, camp, right, or anything like that. The humor here is 100% Nick Cage, and like, I think we need to call that out. Nick Cage is phenomenal in this. I think he's absolutely phenomenal.
I feel like it's another zany performance.
Yeah, I mean,
and I love Nick Cage. I love his zaniness, but I just don't. I mean, it's very much like a supporting role where like he's just let loose with weird prosthetics, and it doesn't. It like, once again, that's another part of it that doesn't feel like there's any like meatiness to it. It's just like Nick Cage ending the movie with Nick Cage saying "Hail Satan" is just like a.
It's like it is made for like 20-year-olds. This movie, it's amazing. It's so good. What do you think of Micah Moore in this?
Oh yeah, she's great. I mean, I think.
See, I don't know.
No. Yeah,
I am so conflicted about her because like she makes It Follows.
Oh,
right?
totally.
Like, she is like the center of that movie, and her deadpan, kind of disassociated, disconnected style of acting in that works so well. And I've seen her in other stuff recently, and I'm just like, I don't know. I
don't know what else I've really seen her in.
She's been in tons of stuff, I feel like.
I think the script largely fails her here. Because she doesn't have, like, dialogue is not really a thing in this movie except for when Nick Cage shows up.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I agree with you about your point about like where she's opening the letter in her isolated house in the darkness.
Yeah.
Like she does sell that. And I think she largely sells the like reaction to the reveal in the final act, but it's nothing. Yeah, I'd say like because there's nothing like super interesting narratively going on there. There's only to a certain extent she can take that as an actor.
I say that she's done a lot. Now that I'm looking at her stuff, it's like, oh, she hasn't done a ton. I mean, she does a lot, but she's not in a lot of big movies. She's got a lot of smaller movies that I've seen.
She's got a very like familiar kind of like face and physique that feels like it fits these kinds of universes pretty perfectly.
Yeah. So you didn't see Longlegs twice in the theater.
Oh, no.
But you did see our next movie, Trap. And you get to intro Trap because this is going to be your baby.
Okay. I mean, we all know what Trap is, right? It's Shyamalan of Sixth Sense and Unbreakable fame coming finally. This is the first one, right, to the serial killer genre, and he had been wanting to do it for years and was trying to find a way to both enter that cinematic vernacular as well as help kickstart the pop career of his singer-songwriter daughter. Just, basically contemporaneously with his other daughter's filmmaking career. She put out The Watchers.
Which did you see, by the way?
Nope.
It's terrible.
I couldn't get to the theater before it left.
Awful.
But he is doing something here that from the very first, suggestions of a log line in an initial teaser trailer seemed like, classic Shyamalan high concept silliness. We've got Josh Hartnett in his first lead role in years, at least that was in wide release. Yeah. And he is Cooper, the serial killer, and he's known as the Butcher in the media. We are revealed pretty early on, both because of the marketing of the film, as well as basically by like the 10-minute mark. He's got an app on his phone that is the surveillance camera access to where he keeps his victims until he decides to either gas them or carve them up, maybe both. And he is realizing that he is starting to get cornered by the authorities while he's at a Taylor Swift-esque concert in an arena with his daughter, who's 13, Riley, played, I think, pretty magnificently by this newcomer, Ariel, I forget her last name.
Donahue?
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so the trap, of course, is that the police and FBI have the arena surrounded, and they have tip that the butcher is in the audience, and they're going to, question and search every 30 to 40-year-old male trying to exit the building. So how does he get out when he's very clearly fits the bill of the butcher?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Where do we like? We gotta talk about our M. Night Shyamalan relationships.
Okay, that's a good place to start.
Because I don't think we've done one before. Have we done an M. Night movie?
I feel like we should have by now, but I think you're right.
I don't think that we have. Maybe we have. We've done like 100 episodes now, so I kind of forget what we've done.
Did we do The Village at some point? Maybe that was
watched The Village for a birthday watch. But
yeah.
I love them. I've always loved them, but I think with this film, I am getting to the point in the relationship where I realize things are not going well.
Oh, really? This is where I feel like, okay, this is not a toxic relationship. This is me finally
really enjoying it.
Yeah.
So finally, acquiescing. I think for me, like I'll be as brief as possible because I could talk about M. Night Shyamalan for a long time. Sixth Sense, one of my favorite movies. I loved Sixth Sense when it came out. I was confused by Unbreakable, but have grown to love it later on. I've adored Signs when it came out, and I still adore it. Village, we saw it together in Minneapolis when it came out. You enjoyed it a lot. I hated it. I've come to love it. It's probably like my second favorite M. Night movie. Mm-hmm. And then since then, it's I have kept the fire burning for him. I guess, is that a phrase?
Sure.
Just like always hopeful that he'll make another Signs or another Unbreakable or Sixth Sense. Each time I get my hopes up, they're just dashed on the rocks. The Happening, I was so hyped for that movie. Great trailer. And I think Trapped also has a great trailer as well.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of really good ones. It got me super hyped. And I get let down. And, the more recent one, Knock at the Cabin, and Old, I enjoyed. They're fun. They're like a Twilight Zone episode, just done really well. Doesn't reach the height of his early movies, but I'm on board with that. I think with this one is kind of like where I'm realizing, as my therapist would say, Dan, you're trying too hard. Right? I'm just waiting for M. Night to give me what I want in this relationship, and it's just never going to happen, unfortunately.
Yeah. And that's interesting because I was, I think a lot of us were kind of back in the tank, so to speak, for Shyamalan when The Visit and Split came out in 15 and 16. That was kind of his resurgence, if you will. But then, Glass was a mess in 19. And I didn't really, I loved the, if you will, vibes of Old. I think it was a pretty ingenious premise and shot beautifully. Similar with Knock at the Cabin, which was his first and only to date adaptation of outside source. Both those movies had incredible first acts, and then they just kind of wrecked themselves as they went after that. I think Trap has brought me back in because he's reeled himself back in, so to speak. This is, for better or worse, like a B movie that has the budget of an A movie, and that is something that it's such a unique concept. It's such a audacious gamble to try to launch your daughter's music career with a serial killer movie. There is so much going on here subtextually as well as textually that it feels like his first really attempt at wrestling with something other than, pretty basic ideas such as aging or religion. And I think that for the most part, the second watch was even better than the first one for me because I had the benefit of knowing where he was going this time. And I think that is what essentially lost a lot of us back in the 2000s with Lady in the Water and The Happening, where they this was him kind of rested. That was him like resting on his laurels and kind of letting his narcissist mode kind of take over. But here we finally have, him trying to deal with that. And I think I maybe I'm a lunatic, but it's very much felt. I think this is his most personal film ever, and I think it's very apparent from frame one. No pun intended. Apparent, and even down to like the dad jokeness of casting Haley Mills from The Parent Trap in the role as the FBI profiler. He's got a knack for having this really dorky sense of humor and injecting it into something that is quite literally a like bonkers cartoon thrill ride, all the way to like its spun out of control third act, which I hated in my first watch and have come around to appreciate and see why he was doing what he was doing in my second. That said, I totally understand the critique that a movie should not need to be seen twice in order for it to come across as good. Yeah. I am curious how much of the, first and foremost, how much of that autobiographical element came through to you in your watch, and if your problem was largely with the third act, or if you were kind of getting upset from the beginning of the movie.
Oh, I knew that I wasn't going to like it within about 10 minutes. Yeah. And then, I think for me, the thing that stood out, the thing that was glaringly obvious to me right from the start is that like what was sold in the trailer as like this very tight, engaging, thriller, that just was not the case. In the opening 10-15 minutes, it just plods along. It's a perfect juxtaposition to Longlegs, which pulled me in the first 30 seconds, pulled me in the first couple of frames. I was like, what's going on? This is like, and it's just, it really is that the difference between someone or a filmmaker who, and this is going to be a pretty deep criticism of M. Night, he just, for some reason, in his earlier career, it's like he understood from a filmmaking perspective how to engage people in a really good story right from the start. In here, he does not have the visual palette going on to really pull people in. It felt so inert to me. Like the opening, yeah. And I knew it right away. I was like, oh no. Because if you don't get that right from the first half hour, the movie is doomed. And like, that's what it felt like to me. I was watching this doomed movie play out that was really poorly written. I mean, extremely poorly written. And I will, you're going to have to put up a mirror to yourself here, because this is one of those movies where, as a M. Night fan who's loved his earlier work, I give him all the breaks in the world, especially when it comes to like plot stuff, like Knock at the Cabin, like old, come on, made no sense.
Yeah.
This one also doesn't make sense, but it's trying to ground itself in a realistic world. And it's like, yes, on the one hand, I want to be the fun guy that says, just don't think about it. It's a movie, whatever. But there's a line there, and I feel like M. Night is taking my goodwill and just like throwing it in my face every other scene. He's like, I don't care about anything that's rational. How does any of this make sense from any level? It doesn't. And then he just keeps ratcheting up that like absurdity over and over and over again. So it's basically a comedy to me.
Oh yeah, it is.
Right. I mean, it's not a thriller at all. It's not a horror movie. It's definitely almost like a campy, fun Hitchcockian romp, You know, it's just like, whatever, this is fun. I had a good time. And like the ending where he's like, you know, picking off the shackles or whatever. And it's just like you could have put like a slide whistle or something and it would have worked. And it's just like from that perspective, yeah. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't see anything that you're seeing of this like emotional undercurrent of him wrestling with things. To me, this just seems like M. Night's having some fun with his own money. And that's it. And then, you know, like there's tons of criticisms about this movie that like are like whatever, like, oh, he's just promoting his daughter's music. Sure, she's actually not a bad actor. I liked her. I thought she was good. She has screen presence and like really brought a lot to that character, I thought. And Josh Hartnett's phenomenal. I mean, he's just like,
he's so freaking good.
He's so good. I don't know. He's, you know, I'm glad that he's back, but we missed the last, you know, 10 years of having him as leading man. I think the thing for me more than anything else here is it just, whereas with Longlegs, I can be like, it looks amazing. It made me feel some really cool, interesting feelings that I go to movies to see, especially horror movies. And the story just is nonsensical, but I'm fine with that because it does that other thing. To me, Trap does none of it. It doesn't, from a visuals perspective, really pull me in. The audio is like whatever. His daughter singing 90% of the movie. And then from a writing narrative, emotional narrative, there's nothing. Like, it is so tropey. Like, we talk about like Longlegs having all these tropes. I mean, like mother issues. Like,
that's one of the things I wanted to mention in particular, because you've got literally the daughter, the son of Norman Bates, trying to grapple with that in Longlegs, but Shyamalan does it, in my opinion, he's alluding to Psycho a lot better.
Can I mute you? I want to mute you.
And the parallelism with his mother haunting him and Haley Mills hunting him, oh my god.
I feel like I'm back in grad school, Chris. We're talking about like the homosexual themes in Edgar Allan Poe. Like, I was like, just pulling at whatever.
But that feels very deliberate. That feels very much like you can't talk about Shyamalan without also talking about Hitchcockian influence. It's
totally 100%. Yeah.
But that's also something we've been talking about outside the pod, where you know you've been struggling to find kind of a good entry point for Hitchcock, and
yeah, that's true.
He's a director that I've been fascinated by and loved since my childhood. So I think that everybody brings their own stuff, right, to watching a movie, and not to make things too facile, but I also think watching Trap as a Shyamalan fan who's also a dad can be a very different experience. And I felt that very much. Like that's one of the things that I loved about the film, is that unlike Longlegs, I think this movie is able to have its cake and eat it too, where he's able to both help launch his daughter's career and then see him like through Josh Hartnett's eyes. Like that's such an incredible thing that he's like making this avatar of himself that's like a very handsome serial killer, right? And it's like he knows what he's doing is wrong, and yet he can't help himself but do it. And one of the things that really like it helped me with my second watch of this movie, because I will have to go back to your claims about it being inert from the first 10 minutes because I think you're nuts. But in regards to the third act of the film, where it seems like it lost a lot of the audience and critics, if you look at this movie from that perspective, where it's more comedic, it's more like a Bugs Bunny cartoon, and he set this out from day one when he was writing the script. He says that's one of the reasons why it did not take very long to write, which usually is like a red flag for me, like Dashboard Confessional saying he wrote Vindicated in an afternoon. To reference something else from our youth. But he started out by saying like the only way that he wanted this movie to work is if the lead character also came to every like problem and conflict and obstacle with this idea of like, I'm always going to figure it out. I'm always going to get away with it.
Yeah.
And yes, that totally unmoors the film from realism. But I think if you're already in the bag for a guy that, you know, did a you know, multiple personality disorder thriller that ends in like entrenching himself into a universe of his own superhero films, like this is a guy that is like there are no standards that he is worrying about other than making sure he's going to shoot on film and get the cinematographer from Call Me by Your Name, right?
Which is which is also don't get me started.
I think it's so I think that's fascinating too, and like I was thinking about that a lot too on my first versus second watch, but then on the second watch it's like there are so many interesting shots that are happening in this movie that are not like visually arresting in the way that Longlegs is, but are visually arresting in the way that like you have to keep into consideration like a very particular kind of lighting for a pop concert between everybody's phones, plus the projections happening on stage. There's so much consideration even when they get outside of the arena as to how to do these, and I think you hated them, right? These extreme close-ups, both of objects and of faces.
Yeah, POV. It's a POV game.
Yeah. Well, I guess call me a gamer then.
I just have to say, I love the fact that you used the parent card to defend M. Night.
I got to.
A la JD Vance.
Yeah, I mean, you are one of the childless that will have to
I'm one of the childless. That's true. Yeah. No, I hear where you're coming from. There's definitely a layer of the parent-child relationship, although that emotional nuance that some people are just not going to get.
Yeah. And so going back to your claim about it being inert, like one of the things that I was feeling during both watches is like, even if this wasn't a serial killer movie, I would just it's kind of a horror movie to think about, like being a dad taking your kid to a crowded concert of an artist that you have no interest in seeing.
Yeah.
And so that felt like it was tense for me already. Like, oh my God, he's got to find parking.
You're really pulling at some like, you're just like anything that's gonna stick. No, I mean I respect your opinion, Chris. I truly do. The inert part of it to me, and I was thinking about this earlier today, because it's like always hard to describe what that means. Right? Like when a movie just doesn't have that spark or vitality in it. And it is very tough to describe, and maybe it's a very subjective thing. The only way I would put it is that like there's some filmmakers, M. Night is not one of them. He was early on. I think through The Village, he was able to put pretty much anything on his script on screen and make it pop. He has not been able to do that since, with some exceptions, of course. But like other filmmakers, and I'm gonna bring them up. It's we got to do like the drinking game of this podcast where I bring up Quentin Tarantino, the film bro drinking game.
Yeah.
Like Quentin Tarantino could literally, he's done this multiple films, shoot two people talking. And it is the most riveting thing you've ever seen. The opening of Inglourious Bastards, the multiple scenes in Pulp Fiction. I mean, there's like every movie has scenes like this. Like even Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is a movie that is
talk about inert.
But that's what I'm saying. From a story perspective, you are right. But it is one of my favorite movies. I have the movie poster. We have it in our living room. I love it because it's just there's something about the way he does it that works for me, where it feels engaging, exciting. It feels like I'm watching film, whereas with Trap, what am I watching? Like I felt like I was watching maybe a Twilight Zone episode in black and white like 50, 60 years ago. And it's like, okay, this is interesting. It is intriguing. It's bizarre and kind of absurd, but ultimately not super entertaining for me. It's more of a curiosity that I enjoyed it. And that's how I would recommend it to people. I'd be like, hey, if you like M. Night Shyamalan and you want for something kind of weird, go see Trap. If you want like a really good well structured and shot movie, go see Longlegs. Not kidding, which is absolutely not true. But you get what I'm saying. It's like it just doesn't have these primary colors in it that to me make a great movie.
Interesting. I can readily admit that like part of the appeal of defending a Shyamalan movie is that it actively like does seem like it wants to not sit right with people, right?
Yeah,
like
totally.
Even his resurgence with Split, like, and The Visit too, to be honest, like there's like problematic stuff going on narratively and character-wise with those movies in particular, but kind of all of his movies, where I do think like if you're not thinking about it through this Hitchcockian lens, the mommy issues in Trap are like, what the hell? But if you're able to get past that, there's a lot of richness there. But I don't fault anyone for not going there. I feel like there's a lot of meat on the bones here, but it's meat that is not going, like, some people are vegetarian, and that's okay.
It's like a different cut. It's not like a New York strip. It's like I don't know.
It's a pork belly.
A sirloin or something. I don't know. I don't know anything about meat cuts.
Me neither.
Like, I don't know, Salisbury steak? Is that a thing? That's a thing.
My TV dinner.
What is the mommy flashbacks that reminded me a lot of Friday the 13th, like what, part 1 and 2?
Yeah, totally. Oh, Mrs. Voorhees vibe. Oh, man. So here's my question for you, as somebody who did not like it. Because we're getting to some territory. Like, I saw a tweet the other day, somebody trying to defend Lady in the Water, which was insane.
Don't do it. Don't do it, young people. Don't dive into that swamp.
Because I agree with you. Signs in the Village were fantastic, but those were also very kind of maligned movies when they came out. That's seems true. Like Sixth Sense was universal acclaim, both critics and audiences. Unbreakable was still like respected, but there was like some questioning about it was
confused. The reaction was I remember walking out of the theater opening weekend and people were like, what did I just watch?
I thought I was going to see see this, but I got this. Do you think, but I think Signs in the Village have largely been, reclaimed over the years. Do you see that happening with not even just Trap, but also Knock at the Cabin and Old? Like, those felt like pretty kind of muted receptions, and this one too. Are we gonna do you think his films, regardless of how you feel about them, have the kind of staying power that his first run of films did?
I don't think they have the same staying power, but I do think there's going to be a moment, like when your kids are doing this podcast, because of course we're going to pass Film Trace on to them.
Oh yeah, Film Trace Junior.
When they're doing it in like 20, 30 years, I think they're going to look at these films as sort of like a phase in his career. And they're going to be like, I think, more respected as a grouping than as individual films. Like, I think M. Night's always going to be like known for his earlier work, so that's going to be like tier 1 of like what he's done. But there's going to be like this sort of supporting sort of era where it's like, oh yeah, he's like, this is M. Night, what he's doing. He's kind of a mixture of Hitchcock and like, I don't even know what else. Like Spielberg, definitely Spielberg.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think there's, I hope that he continues to make movies that he wants to make, and I'll probably go see them, but I'm never going to get excited again like I did for this
one. No, it kills your excitement.
It's just because it had Hartnett. It had an amazing trailer. Like here's like, it's sure the premise is ridiculous, but I was on board. With it. It makes no sense. But I was totally on board, but he just, he breaks my heart over and over and over again.
I gotta put in a plug for my girl Allison Pill too. I think she's one of the reasons the third act is passable. I
mean, she's great.
I loved her. She
needs to be in so much more. I don't know what happened.
Yeah. He and I didn't know she was going to be the wife.
Neither did I. I was so confused. I was like, is that Allison Pill? I was like, oh.
Yeah. Like, okay, yeah, he knows what he's doing, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we jump into trivia, we also have to ask the same question of Longlegs, because that's kind of what we end up doing here at Film Trace.
Yeah.
Going back through the years. it seems like we're kind of iffy on the staying power of Trap. Do you see Longlegs having staying power?
Absolutely. I think it's going to be, yeah. Oh, yeah. I think for younger people, it's going to be like a touchstone film in terms of just like, I don't know, like maybe it's an entryway into like different aspects of horror filmmaking or the thrillers in general that they haven't seen before. You know, we got to remember, like, you know, you get this more than anybody being a teacher, but like young people have no history of like where this stuff comes from.
Right.
And like they find something that's interesting.
Take my class, goddammit.
And it's like, yeah, it could be a good entry point for a lot of sort of going back and seeing other movies. But I think it is so visually striking, and the audio is so fascinating, and yeah, the plotting's all over the place, but that's kind of the point on some of it. It's very sort of poetic logic, if you will.
I made it bad on purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I made it amazing on purpose. I think the broader question here is, where is Oz going? He's going places, right? He's got 2 movies in the can right now. He's
got based on Stephen King. The Monkey is coming out in February. Like that's a crazy turnaround. I don't know. I mean, I'll definitely watch him, but I worry that, you know, with any filmmaker that kind of makes a quote touchstone film like this, you know, you end up just trying to spend your career living up to it, and I don't know how that works for me as somebody who didn't like it.
Yeah, I mean, it plays to me like a raw debut film. It's not, but it plays like that to me, and I feel like if he gets a better writer, a better editor, and they really flesh that stuff out before they start rolling, I think he can make some really, really good movies. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, you ready for trivia, Dan?
Let's do it. What are we doing this season?
Okay, so thinking Manhunt Movies, one of the main things for me anyways that's fun about them is kind of thinking of how filmmakers think about location. It's all about like trying to find, where is this person? How do we get to them?
Sure.
And obviously the setting of both of the films we talked about today were integral to them, right? You said the Pacific Northwest in Longlegs is as striking as some of the composition of the interior shots. And I'd argue similarly with Trap. I mean, you've got Philadelphia, which is just, you know, Shyamalan's thing, but specifically this idea of the arena and trying to get backstage to the storage closet to the roof access. Whether you're thinking big or small, location is incredibly important with a Manhunt movie. So I'm going to list for you locations, and you have to tell me which film of the 2020s that fits into our Manhunt Movies theme I am talking about.
Okay.
All right. So first movie. This is a jet-setting Manhunt movie.
Okay.
Starts in Paris, then goes to Dominican Republic, and then New Orleans, and then St. Petersburg, and then New York, and then Chicago, and then finally back to the Dominican Republic.
Man, I'm so bad at this. Manhunt movie?
Yeah. And this is more from the perspective of the hunted, but that's also kind of ironic considering its title.
Is it the new Mission Impossible?
Nope. Good guess, though. Yeah, we're definitely jet-setting movies.
Is it a James Bond movie?
Nope, but it's definitely, you know, a agro-masculine...
Born Identity? Born Identity movies?
I would say it's definitely more of a comedy than a thriller.
Red Notice? Gray Man?
You know, not comedies that are outwardly comedies, but you're getting close to the Netflix original.
Netflix original. Oh, okay. The Assassin?
I don't know that one.
The Killer?
There you go, The Killer.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Fincher.
Yo, Fincher.
Oh my God, what a film.
Talking about someone who's fallen off the mantle. Jesus. What a terrible movie. You love that movie, though, don't you?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Number 2. This one was tough to do. I had to take out some kind of iconic names of places, but I think you'll still get it. So we start off at the Mayor's Mansion. Then we spend some time at the Iceberg Lounge. We go to a cave, to City Hall, to the police department, to orphanage ruins, and then finally to Falcone's Shoreline Loft.
Oh, one of the Batman movies. Is it 2020s, though?
Yeah.
Did
we already forget about the 2020s Batman movie?
Was there one?
Yeah.
What, I forgot how Matt Vaughn directed it.
The Batman. Yeah.
I did forget about it. I totally forgot.
It's unfortunately forgettable.
Oh, it's so long.
I know.
That third act. Ugh.
Yeah, no, that movie.
I had to pee so bad. Same thing happened in Dark Knight.
Oh, I didn't see that in the theater. Number 3. So it's a North Denver suburb known as Galesburg, and it's largely a one-setting thriller. It takes place on Circus Street in a basement room. And then I've got a description of the room to help you out because it's adapted from a short story. And so these are the little words from the author's short story. 2 little windows set high in the wall, emitting some faint weed green light. Rusty grills bolted across them.
Ooh, 2020s, huh?
And in this room, there's only a mattress and then a titular object on the wall.
Well, it's not Split because that takes place in Philly and it's not 2020s. I was going to say 10 Cloverfield Lane, but that's not it either. Single room. It's not clicking. What else you got for me?
So it's not necessarily from the perspective. It's pretty egalitarian and from the perspective of the hunter and the hunted.
Yeah.
But it's a kidnapping movie. So it's from the perspective of this kid who is hoping that the authorities or perhaps his...
Oh, The Room?
No. Good guess. You're getting close. A titular object on the wall that is his...
Black Phone.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nice work.
I should have gotten that earlier. Yeah.
No, you're good. You're good. Number 4. Okay, so these last 2 are fun because they're movies that we did episodes about.
Oh, God, that's probably going to be worse at these.
Oh, my God. Number 4. Bakersfield, California. Kern County. Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Nick's Diner. The Hollywood Cross. An embankment under the bridge. St. Agnes Hotel.
Oh, my God.
A ditch a couple hundred yards off the 126. Mile marker 467.
We did an episode on this and it happened in the 2020s?
A strip joint known as The Zoo. And the film concludes, not unlike Seven, in a field at the end of a dirt road.
Oh my God.
I hear you clicking. Are you looking through our history?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I can't even tell looking through it.
It's such a forgettable movie. Even though it had as I was typing this out, I was like, oh man, this movie sounds awesome. Too bad it sucked.
And it happened in the 2020s.
It's definitely a COVID movie. It was released straight to Max, known as HBO Max at the time.
HBO Max. Oh, I forgot we used to do all the streaming ones. Right. I forgot that we used to do the show like that.
3 top billed A-listers.
Oh, no, I was going to say
all 3 of them are Oscar winners.
No Sudden Move?
Nope.
That's not it?
No.
How? What is this mystery film?
Okay.
You can't tell. Little Things.
There you go.
Oh my God. I totally forgot about that movie. Jared Leto. I've met him.
Oh, man. They should have set Trap at a 30 Seconds to Mars concert. That'd be awesome.
I've been to a 30 Seconds to Mars concert.
Are they fantastic?
I saw him at Lollapalooza. He was surprisingly really good. He's a great showman, but also a terrible human being who's done awful things to people.
Okay, finally, to close up the show. If you didn't remember The Little Things, I'd be surprised if you remember this one. Though I think you liked this one more than I did.
Okay.
Another Pacific Northwest movie.
Okay.
Oregon Coast.
The Rental.
Yeah, oh God.
Yeah. Boom!
That was sickening. I didn't even have to mention the surveillance camera.
I did a lot of research on that one. That was during COVID times where I had 10x the amount of time to do research for episodes.
Yeah.
It's I got nothing else going on. What do I have to do today? Go to the grocery store and try and not get infected. That was really it.
Oh God! Oh, don't worry, it's going to happen again this winter.
Of course. What do we got coming up? Well, let's tease some stuff.
I know.
I need to get a guest for this one. Yikes! I need a
Yeah,
guest.
this is
New Worlds, which is a movie that I picked, and then Hunt for Wilder People for the 2000s.
Right. We're going to look at Korea and New Zealand.
Yep.
And then,
what are some big ones? Again, we're doing Apocalypse Now. I forgot I did that. Yep. Apocalypse Now. Manhunter for the 80s, of course.
Yeah, I feel like that's a no-brainer. We've done a Thief episode, but other than that, it'll be good to dive back into Michael Mann.
Yeah. Now he has his own website. Now you see this?
No.
$30 a month to get access to his
archive.
I
didn't see that.
I made it up. I think it's like 15 or something. It can't be more than that, but like he's lost it. Some good ones. Apocalypse Now, Bullet, Rear Window, and M to close out the season. I'm excited for this one because it's going to be a lot of different types of movies that are just going to be really fun to talk about.
I'm excited.
And like probably a little bit less academic than last season.
Right. Yeah. No Sontag essays to cross-reference.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, we will keep tracing, keep hunting.
We'll keep hunting. Thanks for listening. This has been Film Trace.